The family came to the hospital and they were trying to guide the family into the family room. Everybody knows here in the States, the family room is not the good room. That's not where you get good outcomes. So the family was refusing. So after they were able to communicate what was going on with the family, later in the shift, this particular nurse was working along the side of the provider again, and the provider made a comment of, started laughing and couldn't believe why these family members don't like going into the family room. And so this very passionate, very empathetic from a personal standpoint, started laughing along with them. Well, my coworker was like, that is not him. Like, that's not who he is. So I bring this scenario up because it falls right into alignment of where we get lost from medical professionals, where we feel like we have to guard ourselves and kind of copycat, if you will, more seasoned medical professionals. And that's where we start to lose who we are and think we have to kind of put up this wall in order to become successful in the medical field. And that couldn't be furthest from the truth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Scaling Practice Management, the show where we help practice managers grow smarter, not harder. Brought to you by Talkie AI, the AI medical receptionist agent for medical practices. My name is Jakub Grajcar. I'm the head of marketing at Talkie AI, and with me on the call today is Nacole Hodge, an independent consultant helping hospitals and medical practices with their epic implementations. Nacole, how are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you for asking. How are you?
Fabulous. That's great. I'm great. You know, I have to say I was a little bit restless before the recording. It's been a while since I recorded a podcast. There's been like a gap of a couple of weeks or more. So as I like to say and think and feel, the wait is finally over, and now we get to the fun part, which is the recording. So I'm feeling relieved. It would be probably the most accurate descriptor here. Cool. So, Nacole, we've got a really exciting episode ahead of us here today, talking about your work as an independent consultant for Epic, and also talking about, career growth in healthcare. We had a really interesting conversation kind of leading up to this recording, so I'm very excited to dig into that. But first, I would love for the watchers and listeners to get to know you better personally before we start talking business. So, as a first question, how about you tell us, if you might be so inclined, what is the most fun thing you've done this year thus far?
Yeah, I have to say there's two things that run neck and neck. One from a professional side, and that is launching my new workshop, which is for healthcare professionals. Reclaim the you behind the badge. It has been not just fun, but also very rewarding. Just watching the healthcare professionals just rediscover their passion in the healthcare field, remembering why they started. And the lights just coming on after, they may have been in the field for 10 years, or they may have been in the field for 25 years, but just watching them light up about the healthcare industry has been amazing. So from a career standpoint, that has been the most exciting. From a personal standpoint, I would have to say going to Key West, taking a long weekend and just enjoying and not thinking about anything except for being on vacation. It has been 7 years since I've taken a long weekend and left work behind. So it was very nice, very relaxing.
7 years, that's a long time. I'm sorry, but with regards to Key West, I have like no associations with the name. What kind of place is it, if you might illuminate me?
Yes. So it is the southernmost furthest point in the United States. So before you cross over into Cuba, and it's very tropical, surrounded by water. the ocean. Um, and it is definitely a tourist attraction. And there's just all kinds of things to do, from, like I said, beaches to nightlife to fine dining to relaxing. So yeah, kind of like a resort city, if you will.
Cool, cool. I can totally picture you there. What was your favorite part?
Sitting on the beach, just sitting on the beach, watching and listening to everyone laugh and not have a care in the world, and listening to the waves just hit in, and yeah, just just sitting back and taking it all in.
Taking in the ambiance. I love it. I love it. I'm smiling ear to ear. If somebody's listening and not watching, then I really am, because like I'm there with you on the beach and it's amazing. So I love to ask that
Yes.
question. It's always so fun to kind of transport myself there. Cool, cool. Thank you for answering. And that's a really nice vision already. We are gonna move on to healthcare just right now. And you gave me a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to ask you about. So, this is something that I asked on most episodes of the show, but I'm particularly excited to ask you this question because, as you mentioned, the workshop, the Reclaim the You Behind the Badge workshop, I am reminded of the conversation we had before the show where you said that you ask healthcare professionals, why they are in healthcare, helping them kind of remind themselves of the reason they joined the space. Well, I ask my guests that same question all the time, and I would love to hear your answer. So, Nicole, why are you in healthcare? How did it happen, and what's kind of motivating you to stay here?
I was 17 and my grandmother had a stroke in my arms, and I was helpless. I didn't know how to help her. And from that moment, I never wanted to be in that situation again. So there was a trade school in the area called Ross Medical, and you would learn the medical assistant side of things. So your, if you will, nurses in your practices. A lot of people call them nurses. We are not by any means trained as an RN or LPN, but we do have that basic clinical experience and training. And you also got the administrative part with it as well. One caveat to that was I was also a high school dropout. And in order to get into any type of college or any trade schools, you have to have a high school diploma. This particular trade school allowed you to kind of test out of not having that high school diploma. And so I chose to take that test to be able to test out, if you will, of having the high school diploma. I passed that testing and was able to start the 6-month program. I have since gotten my high school diploma. I have since gotten college education, but that's where it started. I didn't want to have that hopeless feeling anymore, and I wanted to be able to do what I could to help others. So that's my
I
starting.
understand.
Why do I stay in the healthcare field? Because as many times as I have tried to leave the medical field, if you will, I have tried going to retail. I have tried going into auto sales. It just keeps reeling me back in.
I
And
see.
so I have actually found in the last few years my why, my true why in getting back into why do I want to help people? Why do I not want to feel helpless anymore? Going back to the beginning, right? That's where a lot of times we in any industry, we get lost. We get lost in the journey of building ourselves. So if we can get back to the root, the why of why we are somewhere, it opens up a heck of a lot of doors. to be able to grow instead of build, right? So we are in our early careers, we're building, building, building. We get to that kind of standstill of, okay, I'm building, 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 but now what? And that's where we in the medical field, I feel like we're just like standing there looking from above going, now what? What do I do now? And that's where we need to get back to our beginning so we can grow versus build. So we've built, now we need to grow. And when we get back to that root cause of wanting to be in the medical field, um, I think the passion just gets lost because of all the policies, the procedures, the numbers, and also the shortage in staff from all aspects of the healthcare field. And so my passion has really turned into still wanting to help and still wanting to help our patient care, but from a different perspective. It's now, how can I help our professionals fall in love with what they do, fall in love with who they are behind that badge? They no longer have to hide behind that badge. You can still be that person, that professional, but you also can bring back yourself. You can bring back that passion that you once had, and still carry that badge.
Okay. That's an amazing answer, and thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's funny for myself. I am still just at the beginning of this journey, and I just recently I made a decision to join the healthcare space and join Talkie, right? But you're also making me think of like my origin of why I'm, for example, in marketing in general. I always like to convince people, find out the right words to help them see some other perspective on things. But to be honest, conversations like this and podcasting in general, this is so intellectually stimulating to me that it's really keeping me where I am right now, because like I couldn't live without this aspect. This is honestly my favorite thing other than working with my team that I do at Talkie. So you made all of that spring up in my mind, and I'm grateful for it. And being able to do it in the healthcare space with more of a mission behind it, because previously I was in software development, is a great added bonus. It certainly makes it so much deeper. So thank you for sharing all of that. And now I would like to start, exploring your expertise and helping the watchers and listeners of the show to become better practice managers and help them scale. So the first question, that's the question that everybody gets on the show, and we usually cut it up into a clip, so no pressure there. But Nacole, I wanted to ask you, what is your number one tip for successfully growing a healthcare practice? What would you say?
So I would have to say the number one thing of growing your practice would be to not forget about your people. Growing the medical practice, yes, we want to make sure our systems are scaling. We want to make sure our services are growing. We want to make sure that we are bringing in as many patients as we can, but also the right patients at the same time. But I feel like a lot of times we forget about the people who help. So who are there to help us scale and grow our services, grow the practices. So I feel like healthcare really thrives when professionals are reclaiming and reconnecting with the people in the office, with our patients, right? Our patients are what bring in and help us grow practices. So without paying attention to our people, I feel like everything else is null and void. Like it doesn't matter if we are putting our focus, as I stated, if we're putting our focus on the best EMR system, if we're putting our focus on the best location of our office, if we're putting, all of our focus on making sure our office furniture looks good. we have to get back to paying attention to our people. And I feel like once we start bringing that back, everything else falls right into place because we have the right people who are there to back us and to help us.
That's a really interesting answer. And it's already a recurring theme on the show. I would love to get more of your kind of more tactical advice for this. It's important to take care of your people, to create this connection between staff and patients, and to that aspect seems really important. But have you seen any particular techniques that work in this regard? Any habits to implement or tools, or just what are the steps to make progress here?
So I feel like when we can bring in, I've seen where providers will make a monthly luncheon and making sure all staff is there, making sure that, a lot of times in offices, I've spent a lot of time in multiple offices, lots of time in hospitals and certain departments. And when you can connect on a personal level, not a work level. So yes, we have respect. Yes, we know people are important when it comes to our growth. But when we can really take the work aspect and set that aside and just have that presence of being in touch with each other, knowing what's going on, especially in an office setting. When I say office, I mean from a practice level. So you are working with your people in your practice more hours in a day than you potentially are spending with your family. So when you don't know your people who you are spending most of your days with, how can you build a working relationship? You don't have to be best friends, but so really taking the time to say, okay, once a month, we're gonna do a long lunch, or we're gonna take a few hours and we're just gonna have great conversation with everyone. It's not anything that has to cost you money. It's not anything that you have to even bring consultants in for. The most important is getting to know your people around you, getting to know who is helping you scale.
I think that's great advice, and honestly reminds me of. It's funny. Just last week, our team here at Talkie met for a hackathon in Warsaw. So almost all the company made it, and it's a great opportunity, like you mentioned, to kind of meet each other as people, discover common hobbies or discuss common hobbies. So, for example, at Talkie, we have a surprisingly big community of like indoor climbers. And people go indoor climbing with them together. I haven't tried yet. If anybody from Talking is listening, I'm still strongly considering it. I might be in touch. Just wait for me. But anyway, so yes, it was a great opportunity, and across departments too, right? So I'm in marketing, but I also had good conversations with the product team, conversations with the leadership at Talkie, kind of higher leadership. So I can certainly attest to what you just said. It's useful for any kind of business, and I can imagine for high stakes work, like in the medical space, that can be particularly important.
And I think you also just hit it as well. And it's also important to integrate your departments. I feel like we have gotten into a world of this is my job title and this is what I do. This is your job title and this is what you do, and we shouldn't cross over. But when we're working in practices, when we're working in companies where everybody needs to work together, everybody needs to come together, and it's not I do this and you do this. It's we work together to make it successful.
Exactly. And you can discover all sorts of stuff that way. So, you might, somebody from my end might say, hey, we're thinking of doing like a company event. Is anybody here an amateur photographer? Yeah, I am. I could take pictures there, something like that. Or even, in the age of AI, everybody's using ChatGPT these days, and everybody's got like thoughts on prompting and stuff. And, we can exchange experiences that way. But anyway, so thank you so much for answering the question. And it's a great answer, and it'll go into the vault of our clips and the Talkie Educational Vault. Oh, that's a good way to plug it. If you go to Talkie AI/newsletter, you can sign up for a newsletter, and you get the Talkie Educational Vault, a collection of all our podcast episodes, our articles, and our selected social media posts, and you can get all of that for free by signing up for our newsletter. Good. CTA
Wonderful.
check. And next, I wanted to ask you about. Right, so let's talk about your work, Nacole. And it seems like, correct me if I'm wrong, you've got two kind of big pillars of what you do. On the one hand, there's the fact that you're a consultant for Epic, and well, not for Epic, but you help hospitals with Epic, right? With their implementations. On the other, the I would say, rightly or not, the deeper kind of work that you do coaching healthcare professionals and kind of helping them find their why. So I would like to dig into both, and let's start with the Epic side of things. Could you tell me about your work as an Epic consultant? And, from the perspective of a practice manager, if you had an audience of practice managers in front of you, how would you tell them that it's, important, beneficial, when is the right time to use it? If you could shed some light on that, that would be awesome.
Epic is, of course, I'm very, it's very near and dear to my heart, but Epic is an amazing software because it's a one system, one record, one everything. So if you are being seen in Poland, and a hospital system there has Epic, but your doctor is here in the States that has Epic, the Poland hospital can actually get in and see all of your medical records from your provider here in the States.
That's
So
interesting.
it's it's such a very intuitive system where it follows you. Your medical records follow you wherever you go. Again, as long as you are being seen by an Epic provider. And from a practice standpoint, it may seem expensive, but the one thing that Epic has really been focusing on, and I would probably say real recent, in the last 5 years, they have really been focusing on the practices, the standalone practices that aren't integrated with a healthcare system. And what happens is you, as a independent provider, independent office owner, you can partner with your local healthcare system and buy into their instance of Epic. And so it becomes a lot more affordable for these practices, and it allows them to have one system for everything. So they can register, they can do all their documentation, they can do all of their billing, all of their authorizations. Everything can be done right within Epic. And I think that is one of the biggest selling points from an Epic standpoint is it can do everything. You don't have to have 5 different systems to have to be proficient in making sure your claims are going out the door, making sure all of your documentation is relevant to the patient's visit. It really helps lay out why the patient is coming. So it lays out your documentation for you, and you're plugging in your specific patient symptoms and reasoning for being there.
Okay, so I
So
understand all of that.
I think, Mhm.
Yeah, and I was just going to follow up by saying, so how about your work as an Epic consultant? What are some of the issues that you help solve, for example?
Yeah. So when I am hired on as that consultant, especially again for Epic, What you're getting is somebody that is not only experienced within the system, but also has a fresh perspective of what your practice is. Also, very specialized in perspectives within the system and helping streamline workflows, reduce the friction of having to learn a new system or frustration of something not working, clarifying processes. But really, the real magic is that I can really help the leaders and staff actually use the technology as a tool versus it being just another burden, just something else that they have to add to their plate. Really teaching them how the system can work with them versus working against them. So I really think that is the number one key is really being able to show how the EMR system really truly is a tool and not just something else that they have to carry along with them from patient to patient.
Okay. So could you paint a picture for me? I have not used Epic myself because I don't run a healthcare practice. But if you could just paint a picture that, others in the space will be much more familiar with, what is a part of Epic that people typically struggle with, some blocker that they run into, and then, what does life look like once they have it resolved? I would just love to be able to picture a before and after of, what this system can really do when you set it up properly.
Yeah, so I feel like one thing that maybe some practices don't understand is the amount of automation that goes into the system or can go into the system. So let's say using Talkie with Epic. So you're integrating and you've got your automated talking system and confirming appointments and that type of thing. So now your system is now going to mark that patient once the patient says, yes, I'm coming to my appointment on June 4th at 3 o'clock. Now the system automatically updates the patient record to say, yep, patient is confirmed. They will be there tomorrow at 3 p.m. There's nothing more that needs to happen from a visit type. So a visit type, let's say someone's coming in for a physical, and now the system sees that the visit type is for a physical. So now the documentation for the clinical staff is set up specifically for, let's say, a yearly physical. They don't have to go in and try and find that template, try and plug that template in. That template's already populated for you. Now you get to go through your physical, and then the system can automatically create a claim and make sure, scrub it, if you will, is kind of the term that we use to make sure everything is there on the claim. To eliminate a lot of the denials within the claims because they get built out for not having the appropriate information attached to it. So Epic is able to scrub, if you will, to make sure everything for that physical is in that claim before it goes out the door.
Okay. Okay. So it's cleaner and it's less likely to get denied, and nobody likes denials. That's a common frustration. Already heard about that multiple times on the show. So that seems really important. And you mentioned Talkie. A thought that pops in my mind is two thoughts. One, we're both actually in the same business. If you generalize it just a little bit, healthcare automation. Second is, AI agents like Talkie would find it very hard, I think, to function without EMRs like Epic or, there's some others on the market, of course, that we're also integrated with.
Mhm. Yeah.
Because, it's all about the data, right? It's all about the data in the system. And that's why when you call and Talkie picks up, instead of a human staff member who at the time might be talking with a patient who's like physically at the practice, Talkie can offer you, the appointment schedule, help you kind of find the time for your appointment or answer frequently asked questions because the data is in the system, right? The data on, I don't know, whether the practice is open on a Sunday or open on Easter or something like that. I need to come up with other examples. I always say Sundays and Easter. I need variety. But anyway, But anyway, thanks for mentioning us. And if anybody finds that interesting, you want a AI voice medical receptionist agent for your practice, Talkie.ai. Go check us out. And now, so thank you for expanding on your work with Epic. I have a feeling if anybody wants to know more about that, then a good step for them to take would be to reach out to you on LinkedIn and talk more about that. That's actually how we connected in the first place. I was looking at consultants for these EMR systems. However, I am even more curious about the other pillar and want to leave some time for that. So let's move into that. The way you help healthcare professionals find their why. I'm wondering where to start the conversation, but could you paint a picture of like what this process looks like, and what are some kind of breakthrough moments? Like, what is the journey that you take them through? You mentioned some of this already, but if you could dig a little bit deeper into that.
Yeah. So I help healthcare professionals that are struggling with that silent burnout, the loss of their identity personally. They lose that again behind that badge. There's a crisis where the person behind the professional feels disconnected, undervalued in some areas. And then so what we create is a space for healthcare professionals to shed those outdated roles, and rediscover their unique purpose maybe within themselves, but more importantly to reconnect them to why they're in the healthcare space. So
So
when
if I could
I feel like,
if I could stop you there for a second,
mhm,
can you
mhm.
tell me more about this disconnect that you mentioned? Why do you think this disconnect is there in the first place? Is it a reaction to stress, for example? Is it something else? And how does it usually feel for medical professionals?
Yeah, thank you for that. So, yeah, that gets lost because perfect scenario was actually just yesterday. I was speaking with a coworker and she was talking about a new nurse. They have actually only been in the nursing field working as a nurse for 2 months now. And really, from a personal perspective, very passionate, very, very empathetic. There was a scenario where he was working with a provider in the ER, so in the emergency room. And unfortunately, there was a death. And the family came to the hospital and they were trying to guide the family into the family room. Everybody knows here in the States, the family room is not the good room. That's not where you get good outcomes. So the family was refusing. And so after they were able to communicate what was going on with the family. Later in the shift, this particular nurse was working along the side of the provider again, and the provider made a comment of, started laughing and couldn't believe why these family members don't like going into the family room. And so this very passionate, very empathetic from a personal standpoint started laughing along with them. Well, my coworker was like, that is not him. Like, that's not who he is. So I bring this scenario up because it falls right into alignment of where we get lost from medical professionals, where we feel like we have to guard ourselves and kind of copycat, if you will, more seasoned medical professionals. And so I feel like as we start to come in and start working in the medical field, we copycat, if you will, the more seasoned medical professionals. And that's where we start to lose who we are and think we have to kind of put up this wall in order to become successful in the medical field. And that couldn't be furthest from the truth.
If I may. So what I'm getting from this story, tell me if I'm on the right track, is that, you know, you're new to the space, you look to somebody who's more experienced and you see them being disconnected or desensitized, and you kind of adopt this trait for yourself. the question that pops in my mind is it possible to avoid that while still kind of protecting your own mental and emotional health when you are dealing with these difficult scenarios? It feels like that's kind of the outcome towards which you try to lead people, but how to get there?
So yeah, and that's where I feel I come into play is helping these seasoned medical professionals tap back into their why, their beginning of their why they came into the medical field. When you come into the medical field, you don't come into the medical field just because you want to, or just because that's just where I landed. There's something deeper. You may think that at first, right? You may think, like, for instance, you are now in the medical realm and you chose those. I believe that was the phrase you referenced at the beginning, was you chose the to become part of the medical field.
Right.
Well, there's a deeper reason. You may not know that yet, or maybe you do know that now, but there is a deeper reason why, one, you start the medical field, and two, why you stay.
I feel tempted to answer that. I feel what comes to mind is the impact of the work, right? So I've been helping companies grow since I started my professional career. But to help a company grow that impacts the medical outcomes of people, and with Talkie, it's like, okay, previously you couldn't reach a medical practice, now you can, and the AI picks up. And in some cases, it might be a convenience. In other cases, it might be even, life changing or life saving, right? If it's urgent, who knows, right? Or it might be the difference between I worked up the courage to call a cardiologist and to finally take a look at my health, right? Because it's really stressful and some people really avoid that, right? And some people, I imagine, this is what I think about to motivate myself. Some people pick up the phone, they hear that they're going to be on hold for 15 minutes and they never call again, right? And the difference here being when the Talkie AI picks up, they can actually get their appointments scheduled and they can get the care and maybe, I don't know, live longer because this software helped them. Like I have just a tiny smidge of chills just thinking about it, and that's because of your question. So thank you so much for asking that. And wow, I bet other professionals in the medical space should run through this exercise too and ask themselves their why. I've only been here for 6 months and change, and already I can feel that there's this huge impact of what I do.
Yeah, and that goes, that's all levels. You don't have to be a nurse. You don't have to be a provider. You don't have to be in the clinical space to make a difference in helping in patient care. And I think that is definitely worth talking through as well. You no matter where you're at in the medical field, as long as you are in the medical field, you are helping. You are helping patient care one way or another. And that's very important to hold on to.
Could I ask you in this same topic? Because I'm still concerned about this aspect of, okay, I want to bring, if I'm thinking, I'm a nurse, for example, or a provider, I want to bring more of myself, my empathy, my heart into what I do. But at the same time, I want to stay safe and stable within, my feelings. Because I feel like some people just shut off this empathy because they can't deal with the emotions of, dealing with potentially life and death scenarios every day. Do you have any advice for emotional self-care for medical professionals?
Absolutely. And this is one thing that I have learned over the course of 29 years of being in the medical field. And that is remembering that each patient is its own scenario.
Mhm, mhm.
And when we can look at each scenario, each patient as their own, we don't tend to take what may have gone wrong or what may have been missed with one patient onto the next patient. If we can keep situational to where it's at, we can then allow ourselves to come to the next patient and have our empathy still, have that caring attitude in place. when we're taking each situation to the next situation or to the next patient, we tend to say, okay, I have got to put up a barrier. I can't continue to carry on. I can't continue to carry all of this burden anymore. And so now I'm putting up the wall so that way it doesn't come into me. And then now our empathy is gone. So taking it one patient at a time instead of starting your day out, looking at your schedule, going, oh my goodness, I am 10 patients overbooked, and I have this patient and this patient who takes 45 minutes each visit. Now you've already put that stress. You've already put that stress on yourself, and now the wall before you even walk into your first patient, that wall is already built now. So taking it back one patient at a time.
And what about at the end of the working day? So I understand, the advice you're sharing helps you be empathetic with each patient that comes in, no matter if it's the first one or the last one of the day. That's huge. But at the end of the day, you're left with yourself, right? And you're left to process all of the emotions of the day. Do you have any advice on how to, rest after a day like that, to be able to be empathetic and caring the next day and the next?
So I really feel that when you are operating from inside, not operating from here or operating from outside. And when I say operating from outside, I'm talking about how am I supposed to help this patient? How does this patient want me to help them? It's coming back to who you are from the inside. So now you're leading from your heart versus what your mind is telling you should be thinking and you should be operating by. And when you can operate from within, that's when you can take a look at your day as a whole and say, okay, I got through those 10 overbooked patients. And notice I said through, because if we start dodging and going around, we're not really doing anything for ourselves, but we're also not doing anything for the patient. We're not doing anything for the practice. We have to go through each individual case. And when you can look at it as a whole of, it was a good day, even though I was stressed or even though I had X patient and Y patient, I still was able to successfully get all of my patients the care that they needed. That is, at the end of the day, what matters.
I love how you're sticking to your guns here, in the sense of I thought I would get you to talk about self-care in the sense of, okay, take some time off, do like a guided meditation, go to a spa. But no, you're coming back to the issue of the why. And I can absolutely picture that, when you change your perspective on the day, you find nourishment in the work itself that you managed to get done. And when it has deeper meaning for you, it I mean, even, imagining it vicariously, like I feel more fulfilled and like there's more gas in my tank because it comes from a deeper place. And I'm even recalling moments in my life when I felt like I was doing something bigger, when I was motivated by the impact I was making on people, and that made me just work so much harder in certain scenarios. So I'm really glad to be reminded of that today. So look, I would have one last question for you before we move on to where people can find you and kind of tie a bow on the episode. Unfortunately, because this one has been great, honestly, particularly this latter half, I'm inspired. So the last question is, I would love for you to picture, you've got an audience of medical professionals in front of you, listening to the show, for example, and you want to help them find, reconnect with their why. What is one exercise they might do, one question they might ask, or, what would you say to them to help them take a step towards finding that, something practical that they can do?
Think back to the first time they felt they couldn't speak up or they couldn't be who they knew they were. Because there's always going to be that one moment, that one situation where they felt like they should speak up, but then couldn't because of maybe it is the person who they want to say something to. And I don't mean that from a angry state or from a you're doing something wrong state. I'm just talking in general. There's going to be that first scenario that you will never forget of you wanted to speak up, but you didn't feel you were good enough. You didn't feel you had enough experience. You didn't feel like you were in the right situation to be able to speak up. So, really sit down and think about when that first scenario happened. And that is where your growth will start.
So once they think back to that scenario, what should they do next? Should they imagine an alternative ending, or how do you process that?
Yeah, so good question. So when you are able to name it, quote unquote, or you're able to identify that moment, remember how you felt. So not only are you remembering the situation, the scenario, but you're also remembering how you felt. And when you remember how you felt in that scenario versus how you felt day one, or even when you knew the medical field was where you wanted to be, that excitement of I'm gonna help people, I'm going to make a difference. That is the feeling you want to bring back in. And when you get that feeling, that is when your why starts to surface. And when it starts to surface, it's going to feel scary. It's going to feel like, oh, I'm going back to that dreaded scenario. I'm going back to when that first brick of the wall laid its foundation. And so you're going to want to feel like you want to bury it back. Like, oh, nope, I don't want that feeling. I don't want to go back to that scenario. But the minute you can break through that wall and the minute you can remove all of that, that is when your voice starts to build again. And that is when your why starts to shine and you become not building, but growing.
I see. So the phrase that comes to my mind when you're saying that is like, think back to like the fork in the road. And you took one path there, but there was this whole adventure before, this excitement before the fork in the road, and that's something that you can bring back. Amazing. Thank you so much for expanding on that. And I feel like there's more to say, but unfortunately for this episode our time is at an end. So thank you so much for the conversation. Honestly, it was inspiring. And I can't wait in particular to clip the part when we talked about the impact and the why, and just that part will stay with me for quite a while. Now, as a last question, if you could tell the watchers and listeners where they can find you, where they can learn more, maybe be part of your workshop, it would be great to share that with the audience.
Yeah, so I would definitely encourage you to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I am actively looking at that, and that is my biggest outlet currently. So definitely touch base with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome, awesome. We'll put the link to your LinkedIn in the show notes for anybody just listening who wants to look Nacole up. It's NacoleHodge, right? Okay. I can still
Yes.
spell. Yeah, so it's with an A. So you'll be able to find Nicole easily. All right. And by the way, if you are interested in healthcare automation, if you want to reduce the burden on your staff, I will remind the watchers and listeners about Talkie. We are the AI medical receptionist for busy front desk teams. Our AI agents can pick up the phone, they can make outbound calls as well, help patients schedule, reschedule, cancel, refill prescriptions, and much more. And it really can help make for a more efficient practice. We're not here to replace the human staff, just make their lives easier. So, Talkie.ai, check us out. And for this episode, that's everything. Nacole, I would like to thank you so much for being a part of the show. And honestly, it's a funny story. I went looking for consultants for EMR systems, but we ended up having like a really deep conversation about the whys of healthcare. And it was honestly
Yes.
super exciting. So thank you for that. Thank you for being part of the show. And thank you,
Thank you.
watchers and listeners. Thank you all so much for joining us on Scaling Practice Management. And we hope you'll I hope you'll join us in the next episodes. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube, follow us, and rate us on the podcast platforms. And I'll see you in the next one. Can't wait. See you then.